I'm Kim Casebeer, and I'm a landscape painter.
Hello, and welcome to Art, the podcast where we get to know women from around the world of visual arts. I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Season 3, Episode 11. My guest this week is the American landscape painter Kim Casebeer, whose career spans some 25 years and whose work is shown in private, corporate, and museum collections throughout the United States. Kim is represented in galleries from Colorado to Wyoming, Montana, Arizona, and her home state of Kansas. She is, she says, in a good place in her career now, balancing her time between studio, commissioned work, plein air painting, and teaching workshops. Kim was born in Newton, Kansas in 1970 and grew up in the tiny town of Gersel, Kansas with her two younger sisters, Trish and Jenny. Her father Lloyd is a retired farmer and mother Marlene a retired nurse. Kim's family are fifth-generation farmers, so her childhood was spent learning to grow a variety of crops and compete in the local 4-H club, where her talent as a horticulturalist was noteworthy. An early interest in all things artistic was encouraged by her parents, from drawing tractors with her dad to learning a variety of mediums through high school and on to college. It was a natural progression for her to choose art school, and she laid the foundation for her career by graduating with a Bachelor in Fine Arts from Kansas State University with an emphasis on graphic design in 1992. It was here that she met Shannon, and the couple recently celebrated their 31st wedding anniversary. Upon graduating, Kim's first jobs were in graphic design, with her artwork pursued as a hobby. It was only when her paintings were generating more income than her employment that Kim decided it was time to quit her day job and focus on being a full-time artist in 2001. Kim is a Master Signature member of the American Women Artists and a Signature member of the Oil Painters of America and the Pastel Society of America. She has received multiple awards and publicity for her work that focuses on the big skies and wide open spaces of the western United States. Kim lives in Manhattan, Kansas, with her husband Shannon, sons Colin and Lucas, and Australian shepherd Matilda. Kim, welcome to the Art Podcast. Thank you for being my guest this week.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
And you are joining me from Kansas, what is regarded as a flyover state, but it's been home to you forever. You're a Kansas girl through and through, aren't you?
That is correct. I grew up on a farm. I am what I would call a fifth generation farm family. And yeah, just grew up on a farm, ran around on in the countryside all the time. Really just an outdoor girl.
So how much of that has stayed with you then? In practical terms, I mean, obviously you live there still, but in practical terms, do you feel the farming genes in you, do they call out from time to time?
Yes, definitely. I don't think I picked up on it right away. When I was taking classes, in college, I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. So I was taking art classes, trying to find my way, trying to figure out what kind of artist I was or I was going to be. I didn't catch on to that right away, but then I started painting outside. And I do think that it finally clicked for me that coming from the farming background really translated well to painting landscape, to painting outside, to being outside a lot. I love to plein air paint, so I'm outside a lot. And I definitely think that my farm background is the foundation for that.
So that's the call to nature and the observation as much as anything of nature and the scenery and the seasons.
Right. So true. I tell my students that still today, that if you don't have time, if they're in a class with me and we are talking about landscape, even if they don't have time to be outside in plein air paint, just to be outside to observe the landscape is such a big deal, is huge for a landscape painter, just to take time. Because I think so many people, non-artists, don't take time to really observe the landscape. So if we do that, we're just miles ahead just by observing.
Do you have a favorite season?
That's hard. Probably fall. It's fall closely followed by early spring before everything gets very green. So, but I do love fall for the obvious reason, the colors, the changing of the season, the variety in the landscape that you get in fall. Yeah, that's a magical time to paint.
And do you have a favorite light?
Evening is my favorite time to paint, followed closely by early morning. I think that's pretty typical for landscape painters. We prefer those long shadows, that more dramatic lighting. So yeah, that's my favorite.
The golden hour.
Yeah, the golden hour. Exactly. I have quite a few paintings named that. The golden hour.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, what a coincidence.
Now, I know you have two teenage boys and a husband, and life is obviously very busy on the home front, but I'm wondering what that transition going outdoors to paint plein air or just taking time for yourself in the studio, how you adjust psychologically. What is the transition like for you? What do you need?
Well, I am very fortunate in that I was able to purchase a studio it's not in my house. It's in another location. And for me, that is really important because I can get everybody off to school, say goodbye to my husband. Everybody's going off to work. And then I go to my studio, and it's a quiet place. It's not full of noise and all the hustle bustle. So once I get in here to my studio, it's a mental shift. It's like, okay, just breathe and calm down and relax and put on some music and start painting. So it's really wonderful that I have my personal space that I can paint in.
When you look at how art has affected you and your growth as a person, I'm wondering how you see your own character maybe shifting a little bit. Maybe, there's something in your temperament that it's improved. I know for a lot of artists, it's taught us patience, for sure. But I'm wondering what the Kim Casebeer might have been like before you settled down to be a professional artist, with all the hubbub of life and, and coming into adulthood too, going through that phase and who you were then and who you are now because of your art.
Yeah, it probably has taught me patience, that's for sure. But then again, I think being a mom to two boys has probably done that too. Just if I have to be perfectly honest, maybe more so than the art. Yeah, I'm kind of a workhorse, Chris, and I think that comes from my farm background. Like we're workers. So the biggest trap that I probably, and I still fall into occasionally, is getting to the studio and getting into that work mode, but being a little bit, I don't know if the mechanical is the right way, but just like working hard, like just, I got to work, and just get all like really, but not thinking enough about what I'm doing. Like I really do have to force myself to stand back from my work and take a break and kind of mentally reset and think about what I'm painting. I have to continually do that because if I don't tell myself to, I just keep working. So that's probably the biggest hurdle that I have.
The discipline of it.
The discipline of stopping. which is, I don't know. Does that seem weird? I don't know. The discipline of like, stop. Yeah. The discipline of breathing and stopping and taking that time that we all need to, just to see our work in a little bit different light, like just to stand 10 feet or 20 feet back from the work is probably one of the things that I struggle with the most.
So when you're in the studio, then you said you sometimes put on some music. Do you always put on music? Is that part of creating the atmosphere?
Most of the time, yes. Not all the time. I also listen to podcasts, so that's another thing that I will do. Anything just to have a little noise in the background is helpful to me.
Do you allow the phone to ring?
Yes, I do. Not very seldom do I turn it completely off, and that's just my time of life, because it never fails. I'm always getting some kind of text message or phone call from my kids, and they need to talk to me about something. So I feel strange if to cut everything off completely doesn't feel good. I probably would be more nervous if I did that, and then I can't concentrate on painting when I'm worried. So yeah, I leave it on.
Well, it's access to mum, especially teenage boys. I'm sure you welcome them reaching out to you.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the boundaries. I don't know. I am happy that they reach out when they need to. That's for sure.
So when you come out of the studio, then, is that because of time constraints that you've got to go and cook dinner, or is it because you just finished work in a place where it's right to walk away from it? You can allow yourself to walk away from it. But given what you just said, it might not be that you can give yourself permission to walk away from it. How does that work?
Yeah. I would say it's a little bit of both. It probably honestly is a little more, it's 6:00. I should probably go home and figure out what we're going to eat. Then I'm done. Now, I won't say that's always the case. Sometimes I work really efficiently during the day, and I've been on my feet all day long, and I'm just flat out tired and ready to be done. But yeah, I do really try to make an effort to stop in the evening and get home and at least eat dinner with the family. See what everybody's been up to for the day.
Given that you're very structured in going to the studio, I'm wondering, when you say it's work, does it really feel like work when you're being really creative and it's coming from your soul and you're in that place? Does it transition from becoming, something I've got to go do, and there are expectations of me, to actually being in your own place with your own soul?
I think it's both. I definitely, for me, there are phases of the art. Like, I'll use the example. I have 4 large Flint Hills is Kansas paintings that I'm working on for a specific project right now. I'm wrapping them up. I actually just photographed them before we got on the podcast. And the first part of it, they are all my idea. So the first part of it, of creating or thinking of the idea, coming up with the reference material, that might be plein air paintings and photos and a nice combination of all of that, and getting started. That anticipation of like designing something exciting and getting started, to me, that is really fun. I really enjoy that part of it. And then blocking in, even, I really I'm still excited. I think it's toward the last third of the painting is where, I won't say it always feels like work, but the last third of the painting is kind of where, if it's going to feel like work, that's when it happens. It's like, okay, I've got to get this done. I've got to figure out how how to finish this painting, and what does that mean? When is it finished? That part is more difficult for me.
And listening to when it's finished instinctively.
Right. And instinctively listening to like, okay, I think it's actually finished now. Yeah.
Knowing when to put the brush down there. That's all often.
Right.
Who sees the work first, Kim? Do you call in your husband, Shannon?
Well, occasionally I do have artist friends who I'll ask to look at the work. That happens. That doesn't happen a lot for me anymore. It used to happen more, but most of the time, the first people who see it might be, if it's a gallery show, it might be the gallery manager or owner, somebody who's involved in the project, or if it's a commission, it could be the person who requested the commission. They might see it. They might be seeing it first. So that's more typical for me anymore. But I think that was a process, Chris, because there was a time when I didn't trust myself as much. And so I did show my work to more people, to other artists, to get advice. And I have what I would say, I wouldn't say it's a perfect process, but I have a pretty good process now to evaluate my work myself. And so I guess I feel more confident that I can do that myself now.
I often ask this question, Kim, of our painters here on the show, because it varies so much. The response to this is, when you feel the most satisfaction, is it when you complete a piece, you do put that brush down, or when it's validated by an audience?
I think when I put the brush down. I've been doing this a while, and I won't say that what other people think of my work never affects me. That just wouldn't be an honest answer. but I will say that I feel more at ease in knowing that if I feel I did a good job, then I'm at ease. And if somebody doesn't like it, then they just don't like it. And it doesn't bother me that much. I won't say it doesn't bother me ever, because I don't think that's accurate, but I'm usually feeling pretty good if I feel good about it. And I feel like, okay, this painting, they're all like our children, right? This baby is ready to go out into the world. and I feel confident about it. If I'm feeling good about it, then to me it's done.
It's interesting that, isn't it? Because I've experienced the same thing. When finishing a piece, I would stand back and I'd know if it was what I wanted and I'm happy with it. But the validation came afterwards because I was insecure about it. So I'd have to show it to someone and get their reaction. And I still do. But the immediate satisfaction is in that piece that I've completed. And if I'm okay with it, then that's because I'm not commercial. And you are, of course, very commercial. And there's different demands when you're painting for commission, right? There's different expectations and pressure.
Right.
Do you cope better now with that pressure? Do you kind of just take it in your stride, the pressure that comes with being commissioned and the expectations that comes with that commission? Yes,
I'm pretty comfortable with it because I have gone through that commission process so many times already. And they're not all the same, of course. They're all a little bit different, but some of the basic, like how to navigate those commissions, I've gotten comfortable with.
Let's go back to your childhood in Kansas, Kim. We do love to do that because I think it's always interesting how we begin our life, how we transition through life and how it informs us as artists, those earlier experiences. And being a farm girl or former farm girl myself, I can relate to your farm life. Let's go back there. What were your early memories of growing up as a farm girl?
It's pretty idyllic, really. It's small town nearby. I grew up on the farm. The farm was 1.5 miles from Gossel, Kansas. It's central Kansas, very farm oriented. Everybody around the area. There's a lot of little farms around the area. So my friends were similar to me, were growing up in a similar situation as I was. It was pretty common to feel so safe that I'd jump on my bike and go ride 5 or 6 miles to go to a friend's house and not think much about it.
And your mother maybe wouldn't worry too much about you.
And no, not really. She was a nurse in another town. And so like after school, I would go to my grandparents' house. So that was one of my earlier memories when we were young, when we were a lot younger and we couldn't stay home by ourselves. After school, we would often walk over to my grandparents' house, and they lived in the country just across the road from us. So that wasn't a big deal. That wasn't a long walk. So we would go and hang out at their house a lot. When we got a little bit older, we would stay home after school if my mom wasn't home yet. My dad was a farmer. And so that typically meant he was around yet busy, if that makes sense. He was on the property, but oftentimes, and sometimes he was out in a field and he wasn't on the property, but there was a lot of coming and going, and he was around quite a bit. So if we did really need something, we could figure out where he was at, or we could go to my grandparents' house.
Now, we, being you and your sisters.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
You're the oldest of three, Trish and Jenny.
Yes, I'm the oldest. Trish is the middle child, and Jenny is the youngest one. And so 3 girls. My parents had 3 girls.
So were you helping on the farm? Were there expectations for you to get down in the dirt yourselves?
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, we had chores. 4-H is still a big deal around here. I don't know if it is where you live, Chris, but it was definitely a big deal when I grew up. And I say that because in 4-H, you would have projects. You would have calf. I had a bucket calf project. I had rabbits for a while. I'm not even sure how we got into that, but we did. So rabbits and cattle and calves, and not horses, but and then dogs and cats. We had a lot of dogs and cats. So there was a nonstop need to take care of animals or gardening. We also had a giant garden. So there was a lot of work to do in the garden. So there was a fair amount of work that a child could handle, that we could handle when we were young.
How about chickens and rabbits? Did you have?
No, we had rabbits. We did not have chickens. We had rabbits, and that was one of my 4-H projects. So I had a little rabbit hutch barn that, and so I'd feed them in the morning before going to school, and then feed them when I got home. Also, again, with the bucket calf, you'd have to go and check on the bucket calf. Oh, I don't remember, maybe 3-4 times a day. Yeah.
But not livestock in the sense of, no dairy or beef cattle, and it was mainly crops that you were growing.
Yes. That's what my dad mostly grew, crops, but he did have cattle, but they weren't that close. They weren't like right on the property. So we weren't as involved with the cattle that were on the farm per se. Just the more of the projects, our own personal projects.
So you're spoiling this image of, for our international listeners, Kim, who are thinking, oh, cattle on a farm in Kansas. You've got to be a cowgirl and riding and rounding them up, but none of that.
No, I have a friend from my high school days who had horses and was very big into horses. And I occasionally got to ride horses on her property, on her farm, but we didn't have any horses ourselves.
Now, you mentioned your mum, Marlene, who was a retired nurse. What kind of things were you doing with your mum growing up? Did you do all the usual, with one of 3 girls, of course, I'd imagine you were doing domestic things, weren't you?
The gardening. We definitely spent a lot of time in the garden.
Not cooking, sewing.
And cooking, not sewing. I tried my hand at sewing, Chris. I was not very good at it, and then I didn't like it. So that went away. And my sisters, none of us sewed, but the garden was a big deal. We had a very large garden, and my mom and still to this day, my mom is very into gardening. So that was something that we shared with her a lot.
And cooking everything that you grew.
And cooking everything that you grew. Yep. Cooking what we grew. Those are probably the two main things, other than kind of the boring, let's do laundry kind of chores that we all did together.
Well, typically the farmer in the family, whoever that is, or if it's both, they work 24/7 pretty much. And your father, now retired, Lloyd, was he an active father in terms of doing other activities off the farm with you?
Yes, when they could, they would attend our school activities. They were pretty good about attending all the school activities. So as a younger child, that didn't amount to quite as much. It might amount to like a musical or something like that. When I was in high school, all three of us, the daughters, were very active because we were in a small school, and a small school, you're in everything. So I was in the band, and we had a marching band, we had a concert band. I was in the choir. I ran cross country. I played basketball. I went out for track. Same thing with my sisters. So there was nonstop activities and all kinds of things to attend.
Do you still do any of those things? Like, do you play an instrument now and sing?
No, I wish I had hung on to that. I also learned how to play piano, but I don't do that anymore, except, maybe the occasional time I will play piano. I don't do a lot of that anymore. I do try to stay active, like running. So that's, I guess, my lifelong, I guess you could say it's a lifelong love of running was started in my younger days when I ran track. Yeah.
And do you run almost daily now?
No, I don't, but maybe 3 times a week.
And what kind of a child were you? Were you gravitating towards your art in school when you were in grade school?
Yeah, that actually did happen. I don't think I even knew you could be an artist when I was younger. I don't think I was aware. We didn't go to museums. My parents weren't artistic and weren't into art. But I drew and painted on my own when I was younger, and then took classes through 4-H, again, 4-H art classes, and showed those paintings at the county fair and the state fair. And then I took art classes in high school too, and had a really great art teacher in high school. So that was good.
What was their name?
His name is Brian Stuckey.
So shout out to Brian then, because he probably didn't realize the path he was leading you on.
Yeah, he has kept in touch. He watches what I do.
And what's his reaction now?
I think he's pretty excited about it. I think I don't talk to him too much anymore, but yeah, I think he loves the idea that somebody from a very small town of 500 people is doing this kind of thing and following her dreams. Yeah.
What was it then about art for you when you were very young and picking it up and getting pleasure out of it, obviously learning a lot at the same time? What was it that really caught your fascination and drew you into something that would last a lifetime? Wow.
I think my earliest memories were that it was something, not that we sat down and spent hours doing it, but it was something that my dad and I had in common. And he wasn't an artist, but what he would do is he would draw, say, like a tractor on a piece of paper, and then I would copy it. So he would draw it, and it was just pencil outlines, and he would draw it, and then I would copy it. And so I think those were some of when I was very young. So those were some of my earliest memories of getting joy out of drawing.
Was it a red tractor or a green tractor? I'm curious what brand.
Green.
Oh, John Deere.
Yeah, John Deere. Later, when we added color and crayons, with the crayons, those were green tractors. Yes.
So when it came to choosing a direction when you graduated high school, how did that decision come about as to what you would study?
Yeah, that was interesting because, again, I still did not put that connection together that, I could be a fine art major. So I was just trying to think of something. Well, what could I do that is somehow creative? And I had a home economics class in high school. One of the things that we did is we worked on some drafting projects where you would draw a layout for a house, or I think it was a house. And I found that fairly fascinating. And that was something that I had researched that was a job you could do, is interior design or interior design. And so that's what I went to K-State, and that was my major when I started college, is interior design. And I took some blueprint, like some drawing classes, some drafting classes in college. I had a very strict teacher, and not that was a bad thing. That was probably a good thing, because if you're making straight lines and you're measuring everything, you want those to be very accurate, of course. And I wasn't good at it, Chris. I wasn't good at making accurate lines, straight, accurately measured lines. I was kind of bad at it. I got a C- in that class. And that's when I said, I don't think interior design is for me. And so then I went to my advisor. You have an advisor in college. And I went to my advisor and I want to do something creative, but I don't know what. And I'm really not enjoying interior design anymore. And so they suggested graphic design. And so that's how I got into graphic design. So I actually got a Bachelor of Fine Arts with an emphasis in graphic design.
And you felt more at home with that?
And I felt a lot more at home with that. Yes. Now, with that, because it was a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and at K-State and probably at other four-year universities, it's you have to take a lot of art classes. That's just a requirement. So I had to have a metalsmithing class, and I had to have a ceramics class, and I had to have a couple different drawing classes and a painting class, and all of that had to be done really almost before I got into any graphic design classes. And then the graphic design, particularly the computer graphic design classes, were upper level classes. So you took those classes as a junior and senior. So I guess that was a really good thing for me, because I got to explore lots of different types of art before I got into graphic design, which I'm sure helped me decide, later in life, then helped me decide that I wanted to be a painter, because I really enjoyed my painting classes.
Were you, very active socially? And did you have lots of friends that you hung out with, and parties and stuff like that?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I won't lie. It was not easy coming from a town of 500 and then going to a four-year university, Kansas State University. it varies from year to year, but it's anywhere from, maybe on the low end around 20,000 to on the high end, 24 or 25,000 students.
Wow.
So, right. So I'm coming from, maybe my biggest class in high school was like 20 people in a class, to that's probably the smallest class that I have at the university. And the biggest classes I had, art history was one of those. It was a very large class. It was in an auditorium with a big screen and a stage up front. And there was 400 or 500 people in that class. So that was a little bit of a shocker coming from a small school. So I had some hurdles. But yeah, I was able to navigate them. I was excited about it. I wanted to go to a big school to kind of get away from the small town.
So how did you cope with it then, Kim? Because it's not easy, is it? Were you a shy student to start off with, slowly gaining confidence? And did you have good friends around you, for your peers, for support?
Yeah. Yeah, I probably was a little shy. I think I was a little shy. You get thrown into, I just decided to let the school partner like choose a dorm mate for me. So yeah, so I met a whole lot of new people just by being in the dorm, and getting to know other girls in the dorm. It was an all-girl dorm. Really fun, though. Everybody, I guess maybe I lucked out, but everybody that I met, or most everybody that I met, were just really friendly. So I didn't have too much trouble, really.
What were you listening to? And because you were a child of the 70s, a lot would say that was a great period to be growing up in. But by the time you got to college, obviously,
80s.
It was into the 80s. Yeah. So what were you listening to?
Oh, boy. So many. Like everything from the pop culture of the 80s, like, Michael Jackson and Duran Duran, to I even listened to heavy metal at the time. I listened to AC/DC and things like that.
Were you a headbanger?
I was not really a headbanger, but I just like a lot of different types of music. I always have been that way. I just like to listen to a lot of different types of music.
How about dancing?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. K-State there's an area near the campus called Aggieville, and that is where the bars and dancing and those kind of things. There's a lot of that happening there. So yes, I frequented Aggieville fairly often. We'll just say that.
How about politics? Because that's when we become most interested in college, in politics.
Yeah.
Was that something that interested you, or you felt you needed to be part of the gang and be, politically aware?
Yeah. You know what? I don't know that I was really into politics too much when I was in college. It's been more recently that I have been interested in following what's going on in politics. Kansas is a little bit interesting because it's very conservative, but we have a few, I would say, pockets of more liberal thinking, and the university towns are those places. So here in Manhattan, people, which kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? Like people who are living here are not always necessarily from Kansas. They're from all over the world, really. And and another aspect of Manhattan that's interesting is we have Fort Riley, which is an army base, and it's what is it? Only like 8 or 10 miles away. It's not very far. There's a lot of people who come here to work at Fort Riley end up living in Manhattan. So there's a lot of transient, like people who come and go and live here for, a couple years to 10 years and then move on. And there's a lot of people from all over the world that live here. It maybe isn't quite, I don't know, as like Manhattan and Lawrence and maybe Kansas City, followed by Kansas City. They're probably not as, what would I say, like conservative Kansas that you might think that they are.
I believe the U.S. cavalry was based in Fort Riley. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, it was at one time.
Tell me where religion fits into your life. How did it then, as a student, as a young person, and from your family influences, and to where you are today, Kim?
Yeah, I kind of come from I would say it's fairly interesting. I grew up Mennonite, not like we call it old Mennonite and new Mennonite. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was a religion that's actually pretty, I won't say it's not conservative, but I would say it's somewhat forward thinking. Like I have a really interesting, I had a really interesting experience in the 80s because I got to go to the World Mennonite Conference, which was I think it was in Saskatchewan that year, because Canada is part of the conference. And it was, I don't know what year, it was in the 80s though. And one of the things that they were going to talk about was, well, how does, like, can a gay or lesbian person be part of the church? And what's interesting about that is that they were making decisions about that and being open-minded about, hey, people should be able to come to church and worship. And they were making those decisions. And I feel like I hadn't even graduated yet. So I feel like it was 1984 or 85. Like that was the first time I saw a rainbow button and knew what that meant. So I think that I find that interesting that was all because of my religion, because that's how I got to go to the World Conference. Now I'm a Methodist, so I go to a United Methodist church, and yeah, I feel like they're fairly open-minded.
Is religion vital part of your life then now as a regular churchgoer, and something that you encourage your boys to become involved in?
Yeah, we have gone as a family, and they're kind of at a place right now because they're in college. They're in high school, they're not college yet, and they have made up their own minds in somewhat. So I kind of like that. I let that happen. Like for a while, I made them go, but now one of them goes to a different church with a group of friends that he knows from high school, and the other one goes to church with us some of the time. But it's not something that I really like. I feel like we instilled those ideas when they were younger, and now they can make up their own mind and decide. And that is kind of how I was raised too. It wasn't like you have to go. It was more like, here's the church, and, does it feel good to you? And when I was in youth group in my church growing up, one of the things we did is we went to a lot of different churches just to see how other people worshipped. And I think that was really interesting because because not everybody does that. You don't just, not a lot of people go and experience a lot of different types of religion. And so I think that was very formative for me.
Let's talk about your early influences in art now, Kim, and who you were studying, who you were in your own time drawn to, not because you were taught to, but you were instinctively drawn to. And did you attend galleries? And you mentioned that your parents didn't go to museums and things like that, but when you could, who were you drawn to particularly? Who were your early influences as well?
Yeah, that didn't really happen until I was in college. The first time that I went to an art museum was the graphic design. I don't know what the name of it. It was a group. It was like a group of kids and like a club. It was a club at the university, and I don't even remember what it was called. But we had some extracurricular activities where you would travel and go do some kind of artistic thing. And we went to the Nelson Museum in Kansas City because that's that's probably the closest large art museum that we have. And that was the first time I had been in an art museum. That was a really interesting experience. I really had no idea what to expect, and it was amazing. And the Nelson has some, well, as most museums, it has a wide variety, everything from medieval art to modern art, but it has a fairly good collection of impressionist paintings, and in particular one of the large Monet water lily paintings, and that made a huge impression on me because I've never been to an art museum before, and so it was all exciting. But seeing the impressionists at the museum was very influential, and probably one of the first times that I really actually thought about what kind of art that I'd like to make. And when I saw their work, it just resonated with me. The work resonated with me.
And so if you had to name some names now, who would be your favorite artists? Would they all be landscape artists?
Yeah, well, mostly. I do love John Singer Sargent, and most people would, although he painted landscapes, but people don't think of him as a landscape painter. They think of him as a figurative painter. I would say, right? Don't you think, Chris? Yeah, yeah. But I have some books. I'm quite a collector of art books. It's a little bit of an obsession. And I have a John Singer Sargent book that mostly deals with his landscapes. And so that's pretty interesting to me. But at the time, I would say probably any of the common impressionist painters that you would think of is probably who were my first influences. So like definitely Monet, Manet to a certain extent, those Sorrow, that type of work.
Sisley,
yes, yeah. Yeah. So that would be the type of work that I was interested in at the time.
And let's fast forward then chronologically to painters. I'm looking for female painters, female artists that you are now, because, historically, this is one of the reasons why I do this podcast, because we think historically, right, of those classic painters, and those are the ones that influence us.
Mm-hmm.
And his work, we'll always admire. They're classics for a reason.
Yeah.
But then moving through your career, which, as a professional artist now spans, 23 years? I'm sure you've been...
25 or so. Well, give or take.
That's an extensive period of time when you've been exposed to so many women artists, especially being a book lover too, and studied these women. So who are the ones now that really pique your interest?
So are we talking about artists that I know, like female painters that I know? Is that what you mean?
Not necessarily, no. These are women, well, whose work you admire, but maybe, in terms of your historical memory of an association with artists and interest in artists, you've gone from the classics to today. Who would be the women who would replace them, shall we say?
I know a lot of artists, and so like some of the painters that I hang out with probably would be the ones that I would suggest are today's Monet or Manet. Should you just want me to name names? Is that
yes?
Okay. I hang out with Jane Hunt and Cami Mendlick and Chula Beauregard. Shanna Hernandez. I don't know if have you interviewed any of these? I don't know if you've interviewed any of these.
Not yet.
But this is I would hope this is a good list. Cindy Barron. There are so many great female and these are all landscape. Well, they're mostly they dabble in other things like still life and figurative, but for the most part, I would say this list I'm giving you are all landscape painters, female landscape painters, and there's some really great female landscape painters out there these days. Amy Erickson, I think maybe you have. Have you?
Oh yes, Amy's been on the show. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think maybe you've interviewed Amy. Yeah, yeah. I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of these women through different organizations that I've belonged to and also plein air events. So being a part of taking part of a plein air event is really great for meeting other artists.
Do you travel much now when you can, Kim, to galleries? Do you go to Europe, for example, and take the opportunities there to visit any of the connection? People often go to Provence, of course, to walk down the paths that Van Gogh and all the great classics would be, associated with. I mean, a lot of people, it's a kind of a pilgrimage, isn't it? I'm wondering, if you do go to Europe and to museums and galleries, and if you take the boys.
Yes. We had a wonderful opportunity to do that last summer. I taught my first international workshop in Italy last summer through Artensity, a friend of mine, Deborah Zamperla. Sorry, I forgot her name for a second. Deborah Zamperla. And it started in Fiesole, which is outside of Florence. And then we were in Florence. And that is an amazing place. I had never been to Florence before. So that was my first experience in the Italian landscape, painting the Italian landscape, and then also being in the museums in Florence is an amazing experience. And yes, got to take my family, Shannon got to join, and the boys got to join. So I taught a 9-day workshop, and then they showed up, the last day or two. They flew in later after me. And then we hung out in Italy for another 10 or 11 days and traveled. So that was a trip of a lifetime, but I'm hoping to do it again. I plan to teach again in Italy, not this summer, but the following summer.
Well, we've mentioned your husband, Shannon, a few times now.
Yeah.
And I know that you met whilst you were in college together.
Yes.
And he also is a Kansas boy. So tell us a little bit about how that relationship evolved. And, did you have to ditch another boyfriend when he came along?
No, we met. Boy, it almost sounds like a cliche university story, because I was in a sorority, he was in a fraternity. We met during homecoming. But it was a little bit interesting in that it was at the tail end of our university years. I was I was a 5th-year senior. He was a 5th-year senior. And so it was at a time when you typically, like at that point, I didn't really want to participate in many of the homecoming activities, because you're older and you're kind of past that and you're not doing it anymore. But we met during homecoming week, because our fraternity and sororities were doing homecoming together. So that's very I don't know, straight out of some university movie. It seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like the classic love story.
Yeah.
Thinking of that film right now, the love story film.
Yeah.
So how long were you dating before you got married? I want to hear about the proposal and the wedding.
Yeah, a couple years. We dated a few years. I would say we both weren't sure it was really going to last because again, we met like, we're like fifth year seniors, the last semester, we're going to graduate in a month, and so everything's kind of up in the air. You don't know what's going to happen. But we kept in touch, and fortunately we both got jobs that were in Kansas. Our first jobs didn't take us out of state like so many people. That seems to happen a lot. So we were here, and we just stayed in touch. We didn't live in the same town, but we were close, and we stayed in touch, and we saw each other almost every weekend after we graduated. So yeah, it did work out for us in our case. We dated for 2 years, and then then we got engaged, and then I think the wedding was 8 or 9 months later, in 1994. So I graduated December 92, and we got married in 94.
And where did you get married?
In my hometown church in Gossel, Kansas. Yeah. It's a big 2-story. It's quite an interesting church, really. It's a big 2-story kind of square church in the country, but it's this big looming white building, mostly because nothing's around it, right? So it's just out there by itself. An old church. It was the first time, the not the original building now, but the first time it was erected was 1874. And I don't remember. I think the current building is from 1926, I think.
So you've been married, I can't do my maths quickly. Is it around about 30 years now?
31 years. Yeah. We just had our 31st anniversary, May 7th.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And you've been a full-time artist for 25 of those. At what point did you realize then that you could sustain yourself, that you could become a full-time professional artist, that this was going to be something you could make a living of and, be secure enough, even though you had a husband to support you, but you had a family as well. But it's a big decision to make that jump.
It is. It is a big decision, Chris, but I don't want to say I was lucky. I'm not sure luck has a lot to do with it. I did work hard, but it came at a time I quit my day job, so to speak, in early 2001, 2002. And at that time, art was flying off the walls. And so I had an opportunity because I started selling my art in 2 galleries, two galleries nearby, one in Kansas City, one here in Manhattan, Kansas. I had 2 one-person shows within a year and a half of each other. And both of them, I sold like 3/4 of the paintings. And the other one, I think I sold almost all of them. Like it was almost a sellout show. And I wasn't making a ton of money being a graphic designer. So I actually made more money with the 2 art shows within a year than I did my annual salary that year. And so it was the writing was on the wall. I just looked at Shannon and I think I need to quit my job because I just made more money doing 2 art shows than I did like a whole year of working as a graphic designer. So I don't want to say that it's easy from there on out, that it was just easy and it wasn't hard, because that's not true. But it made the decision easy, the decision to quit my day job.
And also the confidence that you needed.
And the confidence, exactly. The confidence was there.
Yeah.
Yes. It was almost a no-brainer, like, oh, okay, well, this is what I need to do. This is what I should be doing with my life.
And look where you are now. You've won multiple awards. You have,
right.
I don't know how many affiliations and shows.
Yeah.
You've been represented across the US, particularly in the Midwest, obviously Kansas, but also some of the other Midwest states. So what's on your bucket list? What are the big goals left, Kim?
So I can't say too much, but one of my goals is to...
No one's listening. It's just me.
But one of my big goals is to, in general, be more a part of museum shows. And I have a project I'm working on right now where I'm going to get some work into a permanent the permanent collection of a museum. So those are kind of the long range goals, is to have my work out there where I guess because that way it's more in the public. At least in my mind, I think that your work gets seen by so many people if you're in a museum. So, and I think that's a fairly logical next step for a lot of artists, right? You have that recognition that you have work in a permanent museum is a nice forward step.
And internationally?
International museum?
Do you have your eyes set on any international goals and where you might show your work?
Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, I haven't given that a lot of thought. More the museum aspect for me has been more here in the United States, but it could be that I would, I'm not going to say no because, right? We don't know what's
Never
going to
say
happen.
no, right?
You never say no, right?
You could show up anywhere.
Exactly.
You could find yourself touring Europe with your family and find a piece of your work hanging somewhere.
Yeah. Why not?
How cool would that be?
It would be awesome. That would be amazing.
Are the boys at all interested in art? Have you influenced them?
A little bit. The younger one, my younger one, Lucas, he's a sophomore. He has taken some drawing and painting classes, and now he's taking a graphic design class. So I would say he has been somewhat influenced. Not that he likes the same type of art. It's not that. It's more just in general, he's actually really into graffiti art, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, he's been working with, been doing a lot of, he has markers and some spray paints that he uses and has been playing around with a lot of graffiti type art posters.
Not on the house, I hope.
No, not on the house. Not on anybody's property, thankfully. You won't, at least, you won't see his work on a train car, I don't think. Yeah. And then the other one, Colin, he's a junior and he is really into music. So artistic, but not the type of not fine art like I do. But he likes to sing and he plays the electric guitar and he's really into music. So artistic, but maybe not exactly the same. But that's I think it's fun. I think it's fun to watch what they might do.
Do they think Mum's cool?
I think they try to I don't know if they think I'm cool or not. I think they try to figure out if they often are like, "Are you famous?" I'm like, well, my answer is usually like in a few small circles. And then so that's why I think they always are questioning because they don't really know what that means. And I mean, frankly, I don't either. But I think they think it's kind of cool.
How much then of your work today, Kim, is commissioned and how much of your time is actually teaching? Because you do a lot of workshops, a lot of the Zoom workshops.
Yeah.
How do you divide your time? How do you prioritize?
It varies greatly. A period of time there, it kind of makes sense that during COVID, we all definitely okay, now we got to get on Zoom and workshops were by Zoom. I did a lot of that at that time. And then I hung on to it for a period of time. And so I have been, maybe one or two workshops a year have been online in addition to maybe a couple workshops in person. So, but it varies a lot, Chris, because sometimes I'll be in a phase where I'm doing a lot of teaching, and then sometimes I'll hang back and say, okay, you know what, this is going to be a priority right now. I'm going to stay in my studio and work more on my paintings. And so I would say I'm kind of in that stage right now, where I've kind of pulled back a little bit from some of the teaching, and I'm really working hard on projects in my studio. It just varies. Kind of varies. And some of it's what if people reach out, if organizations reach out to they want me to teach a workshop, well, then that influences my decision too.
So you're in a really good place now. You can pick and choose how you spend your time with your art.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, I would say that is true. I would say that's true. I have a routine. I show besides the Midwest, I show in Wyoming. One of my big galleries is Mountain Trails in Jackson, Wyoming. And so I would say I sort of split my studio time between the Flint Hills landscape painting, and that's what's popular here in my area of the Midwest, and the mountain scenes of the Tetons and Yellowstone. So those are very different. But I find it challenging. I love the challenge. It's a good challenge. And we started traveling to Jackson. I think we figured out we've been doing that about 14 years now. Interestingly enough, Shannon and I took our honeymoon in Jackson, Wyoming, early May in 1994. And that was the first time we had visited Jackson, Wyoming. And it was very snowy and cold. I'm not sure why we decided that was a good place to go for our honeymoon, but that's what we did. And I would say that's really, that's when our love of the Teton area started. And then it was several years later, 5, 6, 7 years later, when I really started showing there. But ever since I've been with a couple different galleries over the years in Jackson. Ever since I started showing there, we've been traveling there every year.
Well, we're going to put a link to your website, of course. Is there anywhere else you would like people to visit your work now, Kim? Where can they see it?
Online, my website's probably the best place, but I'm also pretty active on Instagram. Kim Casebeer Artist is my Instagram handle. And I think it's Kim Casebeer Fine Art on Facebook. Those are the two main places.
Well, Kim, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your studio, away from your easel, to talk to me this week and really get us up close and personal into your life, your career, your life story. It's been an interesting journey by the sounds of things, and you're in a very good place now.
I am. Yeah, it feels good. I'm in a good place. Thank you, Chris. Thanks. I really enjoyed talking to you.
And don't forget that you can find more of this extended interview on our YouTube channel. So don't forget to pop over to the Art Podcast on YouTube, where you'll find Kim and I continuing this conversation briefly. So you actually get the visual on this podcast as well as the audio. So join us there. And again, thank you, Kim, for being my guest this week.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And a reminder, you can hear more of this conversation between Kim and me on our YouTube channel. Just look for the Art Podcast on YouTube, subscribe, it's free, and there you'll find video content, some extra bonus content of conversation between our guests, just to give you the opportunity to actually see our guests. So don't forget to hop over there to our YouTube channel, and also to follow us on Instagram at The Art Podcast. Don't forget that's art with 2 A's. You can also reach us here directly via email if you prefer. If you have any suggestions for guests, then do drop us a line to theartpodcast@gmail.com. And that again is art with 2 A's, theartpodcast@gmail.com. My thanks again to my guest this week, Kim Casebeer, and to you for listening. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with another guest from around the world of visual arts, so I do hope you'll join me then.